Mr. Stroller.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court.
Yes, sir.
Opposing counsels. Members of the jury. What did we talk about in jury selection? Can't use sympathy. Can't use anger. Can't use bias or prejudice. And no matter how soft Mr. Guy wants to talk and how slow he wants to tell you it, that's not the evidence. What he says is not evidence. What you hear from this witness stand, what you see with your own eyes, with the state's witnesses, is evidence. And as Mr. Guy put it, real inconsistencies is real life every day. Well, every day, people aren't on a trial for crimes they didn't commit. And we talked about you can look at something and see two separate things looking at the same picture. And Mr. Guy told you his version. Mr. Guy told you what he believes the evidence is going to show. And again, he could say it as slowly and softly as he wants. But the judge is going to instruct you the law is you can't use sympathy, empathy, anger, bias, or prejudice. Now, what did you hear Mr. Guy say? The first person to get upset, and the evidence is going to show that the only person that cursed was Jordan Davis. And his words to Michael Dunn were, "I'm going to fucking kill you. I should kill you right now." See, that's what Mr. Guy didn't tell you the facts are going to come out prior to any gunshots being fired. All because Michael Dunn asked for a common courtesy. And the gentleman in that car will admit to you on that stand under oath that the music was so loud, it was rattling the windows, the mirrors. They couldn't even hear themselves talk, sitting in the same vehicle. But yet they want you to believe that this man, so angrily coming back from his son's wedding, said, "Turn down the music, I can't hear myself think." And Mr. Thompson, the gentleman in the front passenger seat, we call shotgun, will tell you he could only see Mr. Dunn mouth those words. Couldn't even hear him. And Kevin Thompson lowered it. And what you're going to hear is the next thing my client says, Michael Dunn, was, "Thank you," and he puts his window back up. And then as Mr. Guy says it, the first words Jordan Davis says, "Fuck that nigger, turn it back up." That didn't come from Michael Dunn. Not a single remark, not a single curse word came from Mr. Dunn. Matter of fact, the gentleman in the car will tell you that they never heard Michael Dunn curse. He never raised his voice. And he never yelled at them. And all three men in that car will tell you that the music was so loud, they don't even know if Jordan Davis actually threatened Michael Dunn. But what you're going to find out through the evidence is law enforcement didn't care. The state attorney's office didn't care. Because the evidence is going to show that they took those three men to the homicide office to take their statement. They put them in a room, had video, had audio. They didn't use it. The homicide detectives are going to tell you that's not protocol. I've got to go to my assistant chief and my lieutenant. We don't video and audio people who are allegedly a victim of a crime. Okay? The homicide detectives are going to tell you that they even have tape recorders. They could use it. None of them did. Matter of fact, the lead homicide detective, Detective Musser, was so unprepared, he didn't even bring his laptop to the crime scene when he was summoned to go from his house. He couldn't even watch the surveillance video. He didn't watch the surveillance video. He had his fellow officer go get it. Not even a homicide detective. He didn't even know what was on it till days later. You're going to find out that Detective Musser asked another homicide detective, all right, you go get the video. I've got other stuff to do. Their surveillance video of the shooting was so unimportant to Detective Musser, he gave it to somebody else to delegate with no description of what he wanted. Now what you're going to find out about that surveillance video is there's video and there's audio. You can hear what's going on. You can see what's going on. And the one thing Mr. Guy didn't tell you the evidence is going to show, that once the crime scene was what they called secure, all of the witnesses from outside were brought into a little area inside that gate gas station, right underneath the cameras, right where there's video and audio. And some witnesses, depending on who the state calls, will tell you, yeah, people talked. Some people said the officers told us not to. Some of the witnesses said they didn't. Some said they were standing inside. Some said the officers were only outside. But if you want to get through those inconsistencies, all the detective had to do was look at the video, realize it's got audio, and just ask the gate gas station, hey, give me an extra hour or so where my witnesses are in there. Let's ensure that witnesses aren't talking to each other. And they don't. For days. And what you're going to find out is, on the video, on the surveillance video, you're going to see a witness, one of the gate employees, start immediately talking to the next customer in line about what just happened and what she saw. You're going to see her start talking to another gate employee about what just happened and what she saw. And the video goes off 10 minutes after it happens. Not because Michael Dunn said stop the video, because the police didn't care enough to preserve what the witnesses may have said on video. And we'd have audio. And the way Mr. Guy presents his evidence was nice and slow, methodical, almost premeditated. None of the evidence presented will show any of that. And like he said, beyond any doubt, you'll see Tommy Storns walk out. He was the driver of the car. This is the man, it's his SUV, pumping the music, and that's okay. But he had no idea what happened. He gets into his truck, and he doesn't see Mr. Dunn in person. He has to walk, literally, this close to Michael Dunn. Because Michael Dunn is the first car out the door. And guess where the red SUV is? It's right next to Mr. Dunn's car. And the state's witnesses will tell you that it was front to front, window to window. So Mr. Thompson is sitting right next to Mr. Dunn. And Jordan Davis would be behind him. Mr. Storns would have to walk right in front of Mr. Dunn, right in front of the red SUV, and never claim to have heard yelling, cursing, anything by Mr. Dunn. Not even a visible sign of aggression or anger by Michael Dunn. But Mr. Guy didn't tell you that in opening statement. My next point is, when you hear the witnesses testify, don't just keep an open mind on direct examination. Listen for the cross-examination. We talked about it in jury selection. I'm going to ask some real hard questions. And there will be inconsistencies. And there will be some questions they can't answer. But Mr. Guy tells you, beyond all doubt, you're going to find out that not only does the SUV speed away, they drive over 100 yards into another plaza filled with cars. There's two people, allegedly 10, 15 feet away from them, Chris LeBlanc and Alyssa LeBlanc. Mr. Storns gets out of the car, opens his back door. The 911 call even says from Chris LeBlanc, it looks like they're stashing something. Those are his exact words. Mr. Thompson gets out of his door, opens the back door. So now you've got two men from the SUV fumbling in the back, looking like they're stashing something. Not doing the roll call, not screaming, "Oh my God, our friend's been shot, call 911. What does Tommy Storms do? Calls 911 and hangs up. What does Tevin Thompson do? Nothing. What does Leland Brunson do? Who's cradling his best friend dying? Nothing. Chris and Alyssa LeBlanc, the brother and sister, will tell you that nobody was screaming, nobody was panicking, and nobody was yelling. And here's the key. They're going to tell you that one of those men were on the cell phone talking. But none of the men will be able to tell you who they recall talking to. Yet Mr. Guy tells you that evidence shows they go back for help at a gas station with no medical personnel, with cell phones where they could call 911, in a lit plaza with people and cars. Now you're going to hear a statement that Miss Wolfson gives. And if they play the audio, you'll hear Miss Wolfson lead the entire time. You'll see her lead the witnesses the entire time of what answer she wants. And you're going to hear Alyssa LeBlanc say, well, I didn't see him get rid of anything, right? Because now they're trying to stash a weapon. They're getting it out of the vehicle. They could easily throw it underneath the car. They could be on the phone with their friend. Man, you got to get up here. Just got shot at. This is where it's at. Come get it. Click. That call's more important than 911 to the men in the car. Chris LeBlanc will tell you, oh yeah, I didn't see him get rid of anything either. They really never left the truck. But see if he can tell you, or Miss LeBlanc can tell you, that once they get out of the vehicle and the front doors are open, the back doors are open, you lose sight of them. They have no idea what Tommy Storms and Tevin Thompson are doing in the back of that car, because now at least Mr. Thompson's completely out of sight. They then reverse back. They still don't call 911. They pull into a parking spot. Mr. Guy said Samantha Ickes, very important witness. After a shootout, they're panicked. Their friend is cradled, taking his last breath. You would think that car would fly back in, pull into a spot. No. Miss Ickes will tell you the red SUV pulled up right next to her, calmly, slowly. Nobody said anything from the red SUV. She looked over and saw bullet holes. And Miss Ickes asked, is everything okay? She'll tell you, I've never seen anything like that. I didn't know what to do. I was in shock. Because she wasn't there for the shooting. She pulled in after. The red SUV was gone for so long, over 100 yards away in another parking lot, that people could pull into the plaza, talk on the phone, go to get gas, and had no idea a shooting just occurred. And that is when one of the boys in the car says, could you call 911? For the first time. And not one witness can tell you where Tommy Storms went when he got out of the truck. Not one witness can tell you where Tevin Thompson went when he got out of the truck. The only person we know stayed in the truck was Leland. Now they tell you, a witness showed up who had medical training, who gave CPR. You're going to hear that there's officers standing at the red SUV, and they let a civilian help pull Jordan Davis out of the car and administer CPR. He was a lifeguard at 16 years old and had never done CPR in his life. And that's who the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office allowed to work on Jordan Davis and called it medical background experience. A guy who was a lifeguard when he was a kid, Now, I don't fault that gentleman for trying. But if you look at the evidence and what the sheriff's office did and did not do, it's unmistakable. They're not everyday inconsistencies. They don't take sworn statements from the gentleman in the car. They don't even put him on video. They don't record him. But you know who they did record that night? Sean Atkins. In the same room, Tommy Storms, Leland Brunson, and Tevin Thompson were. They record a statement from a guy who saw nothing. And he'll admit, he doesn't know why it happened. He never heard anything. Matter of fact, he says that my client pulled up before the red Durango, which nobody will say. But they want you to believe he's so reliable, you got to listen to him. The one who's now a 10-time convicted felon. And what Mr. Guy didn't tell you is that he even asked the state if he could get time off his sentence for testifying on behalf of the state of Florida. If he could stay in Jacksonville just a little bit longer and not go back to prison, that would be great. The evidence will show that there was motive, bias on the part of the men in the vehicle. Matter of fact, what Mr. Guy didn't tell you is Leland Brunson admitted that Jordan Davis tried to get out of the car. Leland Brunson even said Jordan Davis grabbed that rear handle of the Durango to get out. But you know what happened after that? 4 days later, the sheriff's office goes and checks the Durango. Why would they check the Durango? Because 4 days later, every man in that car said, oh, the child safety locks were on. Jordan Davis couldn't get out. And if you don't know what the child lock is, you pop it on, it's a little lever, and you cannot open the car from the inside. Now, why would they all say that? Leland Brunson had been in that truck one other time. Jordan Davis had been in that truck one other time. They knew Tommy Storms for less than 30 days. And we're driving around town with them. And as Mr. Guy said, the best friend's driving around the back of the SUV. Well, not Mr. Storms' SUV. They didn't even know him. They had just met him. So how would they know the child safety locks were on unless they talked to each other and tried to get their stories together? And Mr. Ron Davis, the father of Jordan Davis, will even tell you that within a day or two after this, they were at his house. And that they were still so off on their stories, he believed they were still in shock. Because none of the three men's stories made sense or were accurate. Now, what do you think the evidence technicians found when they went to that SUV and looked at the back door? Where do you think those child locks were? They were off. Off. Meaning when Leland Brunson actually admitted that Jordan Davis tried to get out of the car, he was trying to protect his dead friend from the truth. That Jordan Davis threatened Michael Dunn. You're dead, bitch. This is going down now. With a shotgun barrel sticking out of the window. Or a lead pipe. Whatever it was, it's a deadly weapon. And you'll hear the law from Judge Healy. And you'll rule on that law. And you'll see the evidence. They can try to show you the forensics. But what they can't do is match the trajectory of Jordan Davis getting out of the car. And it wasn't, as Mr. Guy said, Mr. Davis was leaning over. You know why? You know why we know that's not true, and you'll find out? Because Leland Brunson will testify that as they saw Mr. Dunn reach for the gun, everybody in the vehicle ducked. Tommy Storms ducked. Tevin Thompson ducked. Leland Brunson ducked. You know who didn't duck? Jordan Davis. You know why he didn't duck? Because he was getting out of the car with a weapon. after telling Michael Dunn, "You're dead, bitch. This is going down now." You have 4 men against 1. But you know what Jordan Davis didn't realize? The other man was on. And there's an expression, God all made men equal, or God didn't make all men equal, Colt did. And Colt is a firearm. And that's what happened. And it's tragic. We're not here to change the laws. We're not here to say anybody deserved to lose their life. But under the law, it's justified. And Michael Dunn, after the facts of this case and the law, had every right under the law to not be a victim, to be judged by 12 rather than carried by 6. That's law, and that's justified in the great state of Florida. And you're going to see the inconsistencies. You're going to hear it for yourself. Listen to cross-examination. Listen to what comes out. That the music is so loud, the men can't even hear Jordan Davis yelling at Michael Dunn. But the officers didn't want to put that in their reports because it wouldn't look good. They didn't want to record the men in the truck because if they had to change their answers like, "Oh, the child locks were on," we'd have it. Right? A video doesn't lie. An audio doesn't lie on that video. So, of course, why would they ask up the ranks to record these men's statements? Because then they can't change it. Just like they did to his fiancée, Rhonda Rower. They took her sworn testimony, put it on video and audio. Why? She can't change it. Not that she will. The homicide detectives talked to these young men multiple times and never recorded it. Not once. And they had the ability to. And you get to ask yourself why. Every gentleman in that car is going to say he didn't have a weapon, but we know that he did. And Mr. Guy calls it a pocket knife. But when you see it, it's a tactical knife. It's not a Swiss Army knife with a toothpick and a scissor. It's not like when you were a kid, the little brown ones you'd whittle with wood to make little tips on sticks. It's a 4-inch blade with black grooves to put your fingers on when it's open. It is a knife specifically made for self-defense. And not one person in the car either knew that Jordan Davis had that weapon, or they lied to the police about it and didn't want to tell them he had that weapon. There was ample time to get rid of a firearm or pipe or anything of a deadly weapon because they're 100 yards away in a dark parking lot. And with that, wait till you hear when the police went to check. They talked to Mr. Dunn the next day. Heard what he had to say the day after. Right? Next day, next morning. 4 days. 4 days, not an officer checks the parking lot. They don't check the dumpsters. They don't check the roofs. They don't check the bushes. Not even the night. And what you're going to find out is that entire parking lot was exposed to the public. They know that the SUV left the scene because Officer Fortuno was across the street arresting somebody for a DUI. He's the one that called it out and saw the high-profile Durango fleeing the scene. And even though Officer Fortuno, the first officer on scene, knew the SUV left, called it out on everyone's microphone, not one officer checked the parking lot, checked the bushes, checked the roofs, checked the dumpsters, checked the lakes, nothing. That parking lot wasn't even secure. And how do we know that? Because news channels were already parked there. Tommy Storn's uncle and mother, or aunt, who's now his guardian, was in that parking lot. The boys made phone calls and people came to that parking lot where they left to. There's opportunity to hide that weapon. So keep your mind open and your ears open. Again, what I say and what Mr. Guy say are not evidence. But you notice much of what I'm saying didn't come out of Mr. Guy's opening statement. Now, Mr. Guy also says that all of these men are now in shock. And his exact words in opening, like everyone else, they were in shock. But why does that standard of fairness not apply to Michael Dunn? He just had somebody threaten his life, display a weapon, try to exit a vehicle and say, "This shit's going down now, bitch." And for the first time in his life, he has to use a firearm to defend himself. And you'll find out he was trained. You'll find out he had a carry concealed weapons permit. And you'll find out he owned that firearm for years and never in his life had to use it until that night. And yet, it's okay for the state's witnesses to be in shock, but not Michael Dunn and not Rhonda Rauer. And you're going to hear from Rhonda Rauer. She's the one that asked for the pizza. She was nervous. She was meeting Mr. Dunn's family for the first time. She didn't eat much at the wedding. She had just been through what everyone will agree to is a traumatic, tragic experience. No one will dispute that. She got the information for the pizza. She wanted to try to put food in her stomach. She's the one that watched the movie to put herself to sleep. And you're going to hear from her take that stand. And you're going to hear that this evening was so traumatic for her that she sought mental health counseling and is now on prescription medication. And you're going to hear her tell you that they did make a drink back at the hotel room, that they were shaking, that she had never seen Michael so upset, not angry, not violent, not abusive. In fact, Rhonda Rauer is going to tell you that he was so attentive to make sure she was okay. She had to step outside the room to get air because he wouldn't stop touching her, talking to her, making sure she's okay. And she said, "I've never seen him in that state before." She's never been in that state before. And they didn't go walk their dog. They had a small puppy that they brought to the hotel. The only reason they stayed at that hotel was it was pet friendly. Matter of fact, Michael Dunn left his son's wedding early so they could go get the puppy, so that it could pee or poop or go outside. Mr. Dunn didn't put the dog on a leash. He didn't walk it around the neighborhood. There's a spot right downstairs from the elevator that's actually on cement. And Miss Rauer's going to tell you, you go right around the corner to the back of the hotel, the dogs go, you pick it up, and you go right back up, and that's what Michael Dunn did. But further, the reason they left Jackson, Rhonda Rauer will tell you, as she told the detectives just the next day, and a couple days after that, she was the one that panicked so much that she begged Michael, "We have to go home right now. We have to go back to Satellite Beach right now." And Miss Rhonda is not really familiar with guns. She didn't know the law of self-defense. She thought, you fire a gun, somebody dies, you go to jail. And Miss Rauer was petrified. And she told the homicide detectives, "It wasn't Michael. It was me. I made him take me home. I wanted to situate my things, get the dog together, because she believed she was going to jail." And if the state plays you her video, you'll even hear her say that to Detective Musser, and he even says, no, you're okay. Even well after the incident, she was still that panicked. And yet, Mr. Guy didn't bring that up on opening statement. So listen to that witness stand. Don't just listen to one side, listen to both. You make that decision. You're the instant replay in this case. And for Michael Dunn, you're all he has. Because nobody in law enforcement cared what he had to say. Nobody in law enforcement wanted to hear what he had to say. They just wanted to give you their own version of what happened. And you're going to hear that on the night this happened, Miss Wolfson was present. You're going to hear from the homicide detectives that Miss Wolfson has the ultimate authority to record witnesses. That Miss Wolfson in the state attorney's office trumps their procedure, their policy, their assistant chief. And you're going to see Miss Wolfson take one sworn statement that night. One video. Sean Atkins, a convicted felon who wanted benefit for his testimony, who saw nothing. And on the night he talked to police, he even said it looked like Michael Dunn was shooting at the ground to scare the car off. Now, my final points on opening with the evidence. You're going to hear from their experts. Their experts. People that work with law enforcement, including the medical examiner. And listen very closely. Listen to what she testifies to. Because her testimony has got to be consistent with the evidence. Not just the organs that she worked on. She's a doctor. She's a medical doctor that works for autopsies for the state attorney's office when it comes to homicides. You're going to find out that this was a second career for her. She was a graphic designer, and then at some point in her life decided, I'm interested in forensics. I'm going to go to a medical school specifically to become a medical examiner. And based on what Mr. Guy said, this doctor, with her expert opinion, is going to tell you that Mr. Davis was sitting down and now leaning. And that's why the trajectory the way that it was. Doesn't make sense. Why? Because Leland Brunson already testified before she formed her opinion that everybody ducked except Jordan Davis. He even tried to grab Jordan Davis and pull him down. And Leland Brunson's going to testify that Mr. Davis was allegedly sitting down, feet forward, left arm up on the back chair, right arm up, making hand gestures, yelling at Michael Dunn when the shots went off. And that everybody ducked but him. Now, if the entrance came from the side and went straight through, we already know Mr. Dunn's on a vertical angle. Mr. Dunn is not next to the back passenger door. Mr. Dunn is at a lowered Volkswagen car to a high-profile SUV. So unless the state can prove the JFK magic bullet theory, Dr. Simon's testimony won't match up to their own witnesses. And 3 bullets did go through. You're going to hear the audio. It wasn't slow and methodical. There was no premeditated design. You're going to hear bang, 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 bang. That quick. And that says Mr. Davis was getting out of the car to try to kill or hurt with a deadly weapon Michael Dunn. They back out behind him, right behind Mr. Dunn's car. Mr. Dunn puts his gun out the window with his door open, and as they drive away, doesn't want fire back. Because now they've got a perfect shot at the back of Mr. Dunn's head. And he puts 2 bullets low into the car, and as you can see, the bullets go up. And you'll hear it. Bang, bang, bang. Quick. No long pause. And the evidence will not show that Mr. Dunn went after that vehicle, tried to chase them down, tried to follow them to shoot them. He had extra rounds in the gun. When they found the gun, the evidence technicians in Brevard County are going to tell you it's a 15-round clip. 10 shots were fired. 5 are still in the gun. Well, what does that tell you if you know about weapons? A bullet was never chambered in Michael Dunn's gun. He had to actually pull the slide to fire the first round. So Mr. Dunn wasn't lying in wait, waiting to shoot somebody listening to thug music. He didn't have a bullet in the chamber ready to shoot someone at a moment's notice. It was a safely loaded firearm 2 steps away from his vehicle, in a holster, in a glove box. And he never reached for it, not even when my client first sees the weapon. It's not until Jordan Davis gets out of the car with that weapon and says, "You're dead, bitch. This is going down now." That's when he reaches for the gun. You're also going to find out that there was an extra clip in his glove box. So not only did Michael Dunn have 5 more bullets ready to be fired at a moment's notice, and he doesn't unload the clip to the men in the car. He doesn't chase them down. He grabs his fiancée and gets back to the safety of his hotel. And in a panic, for the first time in his life, has no idea what to do. Rhonda Rauer has no idea what to do. But he still has the extra clip, an extra 15 rounds in the glove box that he never reaches for. He never even tries to take it out of the car. If this was a premeditated, designed murder, a premeditated, designed attempt murder, where Mr. Dunn fled Duval County because he knew he murdered someone with the intent and maliciousness to convict someone of that charge, he goes home. He doesn't go to an airport, and you're going to find out he has the ability to fly a plane. He had a pilot's license. He had a reservation at another hotel in St. Augustine. He could have gone somewhere too high, but he went home. He could have never answered the cell phone or talked to the homicide detectives on the phone. He could have hung up and said, "We got to get out of here. They know it's us." And they don't. Do you know where Michael Dunn goes? When they get home, because it takes 2.5 hours to get home, he goes to his neighbor's house, who's a federal law enforcement officer up north. Spends time down here in the same neighborhood as Michael. Mr. Dunn goes there and says to him, "Hey, I need to talk to the police. Would you mind going with me and walk me in there?" His friend Ken gets on the phone with 911 to talk to Brevard County. Why? Because Michael Dunn is now safely at home with law enforcement he knows and trusts and is ready to go talk to them. And while this happens, he gets the phone call to come outside. Does he run? Does he flee? Does he come out firing? No. He cooperates. He walks outside with his hands up, gets on the ground, with AR-15s pointed at him nonetheless, and then proceeds to fully cooperate with homicide detectives from the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. Not only does he fully cooperate, Detective Oliver, one of the homicide detectives who's in the recorded room with Mr. Dunn, even will testify, no signs of deception. And he's been trained. Detective Oliver has training if someone's trying to deceive them or lie to them. And Detective Oliver will tell you, Mr. Dunn showed no signs of deception when telling him what happened the night before, why he shot the gun, why he went to the hotel, and why he came to Jackson. And Mr. Dunn is extremely confident that if you do keep an open mind, do not let sympathy or anger or bias creep into that decision. Be bound by your duty as a juror and bound the jurors next to you to do the same. The facts of this case, with the law, there's only one just and lawful verdict, and that verdict will be not guilty. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Strolla. The state can call their first witness.